Hello, everybody, and welcome to overview of Chapter 7 in the Essentials of Social Media Marketing textbook. This is Marketing with Snapchat. And this is going to be a shorter video. When I look at Snapchat in the larger world of social media and how it applies to businesses, I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say that it is not quite as big and quite as imperative as most of the other social networks that are reviewed throughout this courseware, and really in the larger ethos of social media today. Now, that's not to say it's not important or that it's forgettable, but I do think it is. I don't think it's worth spending hours and hours over. However, I also think it's the channel that is probably least understood, least used by people over the age of about, I don't know, 25, 30. It's very common, obviously, with the younger generations, but as a business tool, it companies are still struggling to figure out how best to use it. I'll put it that way. Lots of learning objectives, but as you have seen in past videos, I don't really tie myself to these too closely. But I do want to start with kind of an introduction to Snapchat and what it is. Now, uh, Snapchat started mid early 2010s, and it was the first channel to bring about this sense of ephemeral marketing. That is that you could share some sort of content via social media and it would disappear within 24 hours. On one hand, it was great for privacy because now you didn't have a long trail of things following you, as we've seen lately on Twitter, especially with people liking old tweets that get them into trouble. What people have said on social media that has gotten them into trouble, and then on things like Instagram, where if you scroll down some of these influencers today, you scroll through their account long enough, and you might find some things that are objectionable. The good thing with Snapchat is that at its core, it was all about the here and the now and what was happening at this moment. Now, pretty quickly, you had the ability of what you see here to put filters, lenses, do all sorts of adjustments, changes to what was on the screen, usually yourself. It was usually in selfie mode. And it made for some pretty entertaining back and forth. Now, um, if you were to break down everything, like the Snapchat in terms of its background, you could look at all of this. This number, 589 million people, of course, has grown. These slides are almost a year old, so it's probably over 600 million now. But it's interesting because now you see younger people using Snapchat more than television in terms of um, coverage of current events. Now, I'm not going to go spend too much time on the by the numbers thing here. The one thing I will say is that when you look at income levels, that says 22% earn more than $75,000 a year. Um, that number has probably gone up a little bit. But if you compare that to other social networks, you're going to find that that's probably the lowest percentage of users that make that kind of money among other social networks. And so that becomes kind of that intrinsic dilemma. Brands can do all the promotion and advertising that they want to these younger people, but if the product or the service does not match with the audience, how do they show the relevance and the ROI of those activities? Now you see female versus male. It's a little bit skewed. I don't think it's really that big of a deal. Um, it is interesting that the U.S. is not number one in terms of Snapchat audience size. Really, the interesting thing, again, this is looking at a while ago, but you see a big proportion of people here in 18 to 24. I would say these two younger age groups in general make up a lion's share of the Snapchat users. If anything, I think these ones are starting to tail off even more. Um, Again, I'm not going to go too far into here. You can see it is a steady growth over the years, but the growth has started to flatten a little bit or slow. Part of that might just be the aging demographic. The other part might be the rise of TikTok and other social networks. You'll see the biggest numbers growth happens here. And really, it'd be really interesting to see the numbers before this, because I think 2013 to 2018 is really fascinating, seeing the quick jumps But once you get into about 2021, the projected growth is expected to slow a little bit more. But I do think that it's interesting to see, first off, that this doesn't technically match. I mean, we're at almost 600 already, and you're still in 2020. We're not even, we're not even at this point here. But at the same time, as we look forward to how these social networks grow, what is it about these why do all these numbers keep growing? It's not like, I mean, I guess there are more people that are of age and using these social networks, but is it just more people that are getting more social media profiles? Is it more people that are focusing in on a couple key ones that are their favorites? Or is it more of like a fad thing where it's like, hey, Snapchat has this new AI tool, for example. Everybody wants to get on Snapchat to use it. That remains to be seen. But the one thing I will say is that while the numbers of users on channels like Facebook and Twitter have absolutely flattened out since the pandemic, you are now seeing TikTok and Snapchat and LinkedIn, for that matter, total opposite end of the spectrum, really seeing some big increases. Again, the projected flattening is coming soon, but that I think is less about the use case and more just about the changes in the demographic. Now let's talk about Snapchat as a marketing tool. I will spend 1 minute here going through the creation of a Snapchat profile because, knowing my audience, this is probably the channel that most people use the least. Yes, it is an app. Yes, you create a username, and yes, you can create You can create, snaps and send them to people. And really quick, just to backpedal, the idea of Snapchat is that you take a video, you take a photo, you send it to people, they can see it for 24 hours and then it disappears. The end. Snapchat was also first to the stories game. I think that was 2014 or that they started it. So similar to what you can see on really Instagram, first and foremost, is that you can create a story for all to see. So the difference between a story on Snapchat and a regular snap, as they call it, is that a story is available for all to see, assuming that your settings are set to public, and that you can post it up there for a 24-hour span. Now, there's lots of videos in these slides. I highly recommend taking a look at them yourself and watching them. I'm not going to play them here. This is a good example of one of those there. There are some good features here for Snapchat. There is chats. Again, chats will go away eventually. It's interesting. I did a quick informal, I guess I'd call it a survey of how high schoolers communicate with one another. And they use Snapchat more so than traditional texting now. And I'm not really sure why that is. I feel like I'm the boomer here saying that, oh, why don't you just text people? It's very simple. You don't have to go through another app. And the response I get is, why would you text people when you can use Snapchat? And so it's a pretty interesting back and forth, but it is a popular thing to use Snapchat as more of a texting mechanism, and more of just a regular communication channel that absolutely raises its profile as a marketing tool. But then again, how can you turn that into some sort of return? You have a couple different ways to share content. My story is kind of like a traditional story that you'd see in the other networks. It's interesting because Instagram essentially copied the Snapchat story idea. And at first, the reaction and the outcry to the Instagram stories was one of shock and awe. Like, oh, how could they do this? And now I'm sitting here explaining Snapchat stories to people that haven't used Snapchat, most likely, as the complete opposite. Like, oh, Instagram stories? Well, that's what Snapchat has, except that they were first by a couple of years. It's also interesting because not to go down a tangent here, but Snapchat and Instagram really followed a similar growth pattern in the early 2010s. And they both were essentially not up for sale, but mainly Facebook was trying to acquire them both. Meta tried to acquire them both. And Instagram took the bait for, I don't know, billions of dollars. I don't remember what it was, 3 billion or something. Snapchat said no. Suddenly Instagram was under the Meta fold, and Snapchat was and still is in its own world. Now, if you were to look at Snapchat versus Instagram slash Meta from a stock price perspective, obviously Meta is a little bit more stable. Now, the recent tumbling towards a recession and the fall of all the tech stocks has not helped Instagram's case, but you'll see that Snapchat stock price is a little bit more volatile just because um, it's a little bit they are much more under the microscope to show return for investors and advertising dollars and new functionality on a regular basis. So every time you see an earnings call, you see there's a lot more media that is really putting Snapchat like kind of like in the crosshair. Like, okay, what have you done? Why isn't this growing? Meanwhile, Instagram, most of the criticism they take, I mean, they're shielded from a lot of the financial, I don't know, financial disgust that investors and critics have of Snapchat because they're under the Meta umbrella. But at the same time, Instagram has been able to thrive lately. And they're not putting out a ton of new features. Snapchat is consistently innovating, consistently coming up with something new. The AI bot that Snapchat just launched, really interesting, really creative, and something that I'm interested in checking out more about. But Instagram doesn't really have to do that. They can be a little bit more iterative, but also they are, they have their own functionality. But it's just interesting to see the way that they've gone. Now you have all these different elements of a snap. I'm not going to go through all of these. The ones that are probably most popular: filters, lenses, and music. But creative tools are where you can provide links, and there's a little bit more of a business application. Um, Lenses, that's the difference between a filter and a lens. A lens like is more of an augmented reality piece where you can turn your face into a taco. A filter is more of like a background. Um, it just kind of changes the look in general. Another interesting thing is that you could back in the day, the idea was that you could purchase a filter for fairly inexpensive and geofence a specific area. So if you wanted to, if you had a birthday or something, you or say a wedding, so in the mid 20 teens, the idea was, all right, we're going to launch a Snapchat filter at the wedding venue. You could do that with some good precision, and you pay a fee, nothing crazy, maybe $100, $100, and for a day you could have that filter. Really interesting. Those rules have since changed a little bit. But it was interesting. Early on, I would say there were more business applications because it was more of the wild, wild west for Snapchat. But on the flip side, you now have Snapchat shows. This is where influencers can really persevere and really come through because now you even have syndicated shows. Like, yeah, it's just like TV where you can hop on the Discover page, which is kind of like the For You page on Twitter and the Explore page on Instagram. And you can see all sorts of content that brands are putting out there. This is Snap. This is original for one of our influencers here. Finally, you do have a visual search and the Snap Map, and then this is how you can really use e-commerce and some brands. So this is a shot of, oh, those are cool shoes. What do we have here? Oh, I can go right to Amazon and check out these shoes. Very, very much in line with kind of how brands are trying to utilize social media in general. That is, I am going to go I'm going to check out, I'm going to go promote these shoes on Snapchat, whatever creative video I have, and I'm going to link it over directly to the product page so that interested users just got to tap on it. And then they can, go there. It's interesting because it works pretty similar to the others. With Instagram, for a comparison, you see a photo, for example. There was one in an earlier presentation where, oh, I like those pants. And then there's a little thing at the bottom. It says, view the store, view all products, and you can go and purchase it within Instagram in some cases. You also have visual search. You can do things like search for a barcode. So it's kind of like a QR code where you just hold it up to the product that you're looking for, and it'll give you some results and products for what you're looking for. This is a newer thing in recently. The Snap Map. This is where we get interesting in terms of kind kind of the community feel, the local feel of Snapchat, what's going on in your immediate area. This is something I think that brands are still trying to figure out. I have seen a good amount of brands testing this out, trying to make their imprint. You see, I think there's one here that shows how it works. It's kind of hard to describe. I do recommend watching this video because it is a good overview of how the mapping tool works. You obviously have Cameos. That's a great marketing ploy where you can use people, influencers, other celebrities, hop on to snaps from brands. And then you have other features. You have games, lots of gamification going on. There's quizzes, trivia, things like a chess. You can create your own reality there. And now there's also the the Snapchat Spotlight. Again, I don't have a ton of time to go through all of these, but more ways for brands to not just create content, but to deliver their content to their audience in a new, meaningful, and creative way. I will say Snapchat has probably gone the furthest in terms of really making an aggressive push for brands to get products out there. You have the shopping lens where you can you can essentially set it up where you can make not sell your products directly within Snapchat, but you can make it very, very easy for your products to be sold and peddled to users instantly through the lenses that are available. We talked about lenses earlier. There's dozens of them available at any one time. And by utilizing the correct one, again, these are paid, kind of like advertising in a way, you can use this to get people over to your e-commerce platform. Does not work really from a B2B standpoint. I'm sure you could find a way to do it. But this is meant for more of the shopping element. When it comes to the Snapchat stories, Snapchat strategy, this is the last slide here. I do just want to spend a quick minute going over this. The idea here is that you want to post fun and short content. That's kind of become the theme these days, where if you're a brand, you don't want to spend a long time dragging on about all these different things that you have. They want to be short, snappy, have a recognizable face, and they want to be more of an experience. You want to post early and often, and also you want to be able to tell a story. Now, all of these different chapters throughout this textbook talk about posting at an optimal time and holding contests. Those are all well and good, but you really need to understand your audience in order to understand what those are. The thing that I've always liked Snapchat used for from a branding perspective is sneak peeks, behind the scenes, and access to events. You want to be able to show people something through Snapchat that they're not going to see through other social networks, and something that's going to appeal to who this audience is. Originally, Snapchat at its core is really is all about authenticity, showing people on a regular kind of in their regular lives, promoting and showing the things that they do on a regular basis. That's what brands should be doing. They shouldn't be putting highly overproduced commercials. I'm against the whole, doing all these significantly lengthy and super time and resource intensive series. Rather, I am more about the authentic self. If there's somebody, your social media manager is at an event and can show a little bit of behind the scenes before a speaker goes on stage or something, that's the kind of thing that I like to use Snapchat for from a company perspective. The shopping lenses and the other ways to connect e-commerce, those are all well and good, and those might work for some brands. But people use Snapchat not for those, but for the ability to really get to know somebody through these videos and through these photos. And being able to do that, it might not show on the bottom line immediately, but it's going to resonate with a younger audience and build a brand in a way that currently most of the other social networks cannot do. You might be able to do a little bit of that with Facebook and Instagram, but we all know that those are still highly produced, probably highly scrutinized internally before they finally get out into a finished product. On the other hand, Snapchat is still highly personal, highly sociable, highly individual. And if it can stay like that, that is how brands are going to be able to create very real connections with consumers as they continue to grow and as they continue to um, become these potential paying customers, so that down the line, when it comes time for a brand to connect to it comes time to actually make a sale, that process becomes a little bit easier. And that's all I'll share with for today. um, I'm always happy to connect and to talk more about this individually. Again, Snapchat as a marketing tool here. And be sure to tune in next time for our next chapter here as we go through essentials of social media marketing.